So we're not judging what's happening. We're noticing what's happening in this moment and being aware of the present moment. Now, what is a program board if it's not, or what should a program board if it's not a shared moment of non-judgmental present moment awareness?
Hi, Andrew.
Hi.
Welcome to the show. I know you have spent 20 years in senior leadership, most recently as a director in the UK Civil Service, leading and assuring major projects and programs. And you have been accredited mindfulness teacher and brought these two worlds together in your book, Organizational Mindfulness and How to Guide. So, and I'm reading that you have sold this book in 4 continents, integrating his leadership experience and insights from being a mindfulness teacher. Andrew has developed a unique methodology to help leaders and their teams embed mindfulness technique into their organization and help individuals develop their own practice. So, Andrew, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Well, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a real privilege. So, as you've kind of given my entire life story, to be honest with you. Yeah, so I worked in the civil service, in the UK civil service for a very long time. And over that time, I had the privilege of working on many large programs and projects, implementing change, and various types of very high value enterprises. And throughout that time, like so many people who work in so many different roles, not just in leadership, but in so many roles, pressure is part of our day-to-day life, isn't it? And so for me personally, when I hit about 42 years old, which is a little while ago now, I absolutely hit a wall, and I was struggling at work. I wasn't very present at work. I had a young family and I wasn't present for them. And I was just miserable and very, really struggling with what was going on. And I guess looking back on it, it was a classic sort of burnout situation. And I reached out to a dear friend of mine, and I still joke with him to this day that he happens to be a Buddhist priest, and I always joke with him that everybody should have a mate who's a Buddhist priest. And I said to him, "Do you have any clues at all, anything that might help?" And he said, "Mindfulness." And my heart absolutely sank, Beatrice, absolutely sank, because I'd seen his lifestyle. He lived in a community, and he had very few personal possessions, very much as you would expect a Buddhist monk or Buddhist priest to be in the UK. But he and I totally respected his lifestyle and his life choices. It was absolutely marvelous, and he was very happy. But it wasn't for me. I wanted a very conventional lifestyle. I already had a young family. I wanted a car and a house and all the bits and bobs. So my heart kind of sank. But I was very broken. So I took his advice, and I got onto a 2-day retreat where we were introduced to mindfulness. And the thing which really stuck with me and that I took away was that if my thoughts were overwhelming me, then perhaps having a different relationship to my thoughts might help. And that simple idea has been really the driving force behind my journey of discovery since then, into not just mindfulness, but a range of tools and techniques that can help me and eventually others to have a sense of agency over our minds and bodies that sometimes we might not realize we have. I had a very brief time away from work and went back to it, and found very quickly that I secured a role at the next level up, which I always point out, mindfulness doesn't guarantee a promotion, but it did give me the opportunity to now be in an even more high stress environment. But this time around, I'm thriving rather than really struggling. And the only real significant difference was was these tools and techniques. So over time, I found myself some years later having people ask me, can you bring mindfulness into the workplace? Can you lead sessions and this sort of thing? And I just didn't feel qualified to do it. I didn't feel competent to do it. I had my own practice, but that was for me. And so I trained to be a mindfulness teacher over about 18 months, and then felt that I had a bit more confidence in leading practices and so forth. And it was when I was on a very large program, which was, again, very high pressure, and I'd been there for about 3 months. And I realized that the intensity of the situation had been enormous, and my mindfulness had helped me enormously, but it hadn't been of any use to anybody else in the team. So I said to the boss, I want this to be a mindful program. And to her credit, she said, what does that mean? And I had to think on my feet and work out what I was going to say. But that question led me to think, well, how do you integrate these tools and techniques into a workplace, into a corporate environment? And that's what led to the book. And that's what now leads to the work that I do with LX leaders, where I try to bring these tools and techniques, which have been developed over about 14 years, taking ideas and seeing what works for me and developing my own practice that enables teams to collaborate more effectively, enables leaders and people under pressure to, as I say, thrive under pressure rather than really struggling with it.
Wow. Question. When you hear the sentence, allow yourself, what at that time would come to mind?
Well, I think for me, it's something about allowing, in the context of what I've just described, it's allowing yourself to have agency. And I think it's very easy, particularly when we think of our minds, to think that we don't have much agency, or certainly that was my experience. I can only really speak from my own personal experience. I had a tendency to think that my thoughts were often things that I automatically had to act on, and that the choices that I had were quite limited. But actually, there's a wonderful expression that I was taught when I was learning to become a mindfulness teacher, which is, thoughts are not necessarily facts. And I think the necessarily is really important, because if the thought is that's a bus coming towards me, that's probably a fact. Get out of the way of the bus. So some thoughts are facts, but some thoughts aren't facts. So the thought, I haven't got anything to say to Beatriz, why would anybody listen to me? That may not be a fact. It may be a fact that some people aren't interested in what I've got to say. That's fine. But the thought about whether I'm worth being on the podcast, or whether I'm worth doing a presentation, or whether I should be leading a big program, those thoughts may not necessarily be facts. And I think having that context can be an interesting starting point to explore what our thoughts, what our relationship to our thoughts can be.
Oh, so what I'm listening is, correct me if I'm wrong, that you gave space to and distance to see your thoughts, because they're very automatic. What we think, as you say, they're facts and they're not, and we don't even question our thoughts, and we don't even allow ourselves to change our thoughts. And as Louis Hay used to say, thought is only a thought and it can be changed. You can think differently just by changing your thought. So I will ask you the question that your boss asked you. What does that mean? What mindfulness means? Because people think that mindfulness is just yoga and whatever, and it's not really that. So what is it? How do you bring it to the organizations, as you say, the organizational mindfulness? How do you bring it? What do you mean by mindfulness?
So for me, it's, when I talk about mindfulness, it's exactly what you've described. It's that capacity to notice our thoughts, and that in itself is what I practice when I practice mindfulness. The tools and techniques that I've been developing and work alongside, and mindfulness sits very much at the heart of them, are very, very pragmatic and practical tools. So this is I think I absolutely agree with you. If and I say this with great love and compassion for and include myself in this, that if you wanted to give a prize to the worst marketing ever, you would give it to the mindfulness industry, because I think the way that mindfulness is perceived and misunderstood is enormous. It can be, it can be part of a spiritual path, absolutely, as indeed with my friend who introduced me to it all those years ago, and that's marvelous. But that's not what it is for me. For me, it's a set of practical tools, a three-stage breathing space, which I would do routinely before going into a difficult conversation with a client, with a member of my team, with a boss who's in a bad mood, whatever. Just a way of centering myself before that. Before every presentation, always have a moment to just ground myself using this practice of noticing your thoughts, noticing the sensations of, for example, now I'm sitting on a sofa, noticing the sensations of the sofa, my feet on the floor, noticing the carpet beneath my feet, noticing the temperature in the room, and then opening up to the sounds around me, just being very, very aware of the senses, and just doing that in a very clear, defined way.
And you have to allow yourself to pause to do that. Not in the running is just, wait a minute, okay? Just, I need to pause and center myself. You spoke at the beginning with the word presence, that you were not present in work. You were not present. Like, this is a main fact for you after finding mindfulness, is to learn how to be present also. How to be, like you say, when you pause and you have the routine to see where you are sitting, what's the environment, if it's cold, if it's, what's the smell around, and just be aware with all your senses. Is the pause and the presence together? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, specifically the present, to be actually in the present. So one of the things which I write about in the book, which just suddenly dawned on me, I was very fortunate to be doing what was effectively a master's in program management. It wasn't called that, but it was called the Major Project Leaders Academy in Oxford, and we talked a lot about leadership and so on and so forth. And eventually we were talking about leadership stress, and I had no intention of mentioning the M word. I wasn't teaching at this point. And I thought everybody's going to think I'm weird, and they're going to just pick up their dinner trays and go to the next dinner table. And eventually somebody was talking about leadership stress, and they said, "What do you do, Andrew?" And I said, "Oh, I practice mindfulness." It kind of slipped out. And suddenly, far from moving their dinner table, they were all like biting my arm off, because it's kind of like, why? How does that work? Can it help? And it was really interesting. So by the end of this 18-month program, I was asked if I could do something on it, and I didn't feel qualified, so I brought somebody else in to do a session. But in all of that, one of the things which really dawned on me, if you look at a business meeting, any business meeting, but because of my context, a program board, you've got the person who's responsible for the program, you've got the person delivering the program, you've got the finance person, you've got all the usual characters sitting around the table. Now, if you look at the definition of mindfulness by John Kabat-Zinn, the American psychologist, I'm going to paraphrase, so forgive me if I get this slightly wrong, but it's along the lines of non-judgmental present moment awareness. So we're not judging what's happening, we're noticing what's happening in this moment and being aware of the present moment. Now, what is a program board if it's not, or what should a program board if it's not a shared moment of non-judgmental present moment awareness? Because you're supposed to come into a program board to look at the evidence, look at the information, listen to people with an open mind, and then collectively come to a decision about what's happening next. I have to be honest, and I blame myself for this as well. In many, many meetings, if you look around the room, how many people are on their phone? How many people are actually, if you were to able to read their minds, thinking about the last email that they sent, or the next meeting that they're going to go to, or the row they had with their husband or wife in the morning, or whether their kid's going to get into that school? They're not in the room. They're not present at all. So it suddenly dawned on me, and this was really the motivation behind the book. We have these business structures, a presentation, a board meeting, whatever, which are actually an attempt to be present, and yet we're not, because we're all doing something else. We're all worrying about something else. We're thinking about the past, the future, or we're in a different meeting. We're not actually in the one that we should be, because we're already texting someone. So for me, this capacity to bring this life-changing ability to be present and centered into a corporate environment could be a game changer for productivity, as well as well-being, and the effectiveness of the meetings and the processes that we have as routine as part of our corporate lives.
Yes, it's that definition has a lot of things. Not only that people are in every single different things and not present, not coming to the now, but you said not judgmental moment. And that's a hard thing to get if you are not trained to do so. Just to see, perceive with a different gaze what's happening without, and being open to different point of view, different perspectives. Because you mentioned that in that boardroom you will have from finance, from marketing, from I don't know, human resources, and just saying the names of the titles give us the clue of how each one sees the world. Because I know that finance and sales are fighting all the time, because finance wants to save, but sales need the money in order to sell. So, for example, no, and human resources is taking just the human part, and they don't really care what the finance has to do with it if it's not enhancing the person. So, just being there and achieving with your techniques to bring them all into the room, to be present and listen to different point of view, can be really, really enrichment, a very prosperous meeting, and get really good things on. But for that, you need to bring them all into the room, to be present. And sometimes mindfulness, I don't. People think that mindfulness is to have your mind blank and not think about anything. And as you have said, is just to see your thoughts and to analyze them, and to are not facts. Just to have a space and the pause, to one step back and say, is that true? Is that not true? Can I change it? Is it helping me in my life? Is it helping me in my role? So it's a very, very important part that a lot of companies waste a lot of time just because they don't take the 10 minutes or the 15 minutes before the meeting to get that uh, environment, let's call it.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a big fan of the. I know it's a cliche, but that idea that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and I think you can spend a lot of time doing an awful lot of work, but unless you've got the culture right in your business or in your organization, I think you're always going to be fighting against it. And I think the most effective cultures that I've seen have been the ones where people can be really present and also non-judgmental. And I'd add a layer to what you've just said, actually, if I may, because I think you're spot on. People kind of come along almost with a duty in a business meeting to defend their particular area of expertise. They have to speak up from the HR. What is the legal position if you're trying to make people redundant, or whatever, or what is the financial position? So you are there to represent your part of it. But it is being able to hold that and at the same time have a mind open to what you're actually receiving, the actual information. And on top of that, if we're honest about it, certainly if I'm honest about it, there's another layer of complexity, which is I might not like the guy or girl from finance. I might have had a row with the person from HR. And so you've got the complexity of not only who you represent in that meeting, but also the fact that you've got baggage, you've got history with most of the people around the table. So you've got another reason why you're not going to listen to them, because whatever they say is rubbish, because you fell out with them, because they didn't listen to you, blah, blah, blah. So if you're able to create a culture where you're putting at the heart of why you're there the mission to achieve the program, to achieve increased profits, to achieve a better world, whatever it is that your organization is about, and however you define a better world. But if you're able to put the ambition and the objective that you're collaborating over at the heart of it, and enable yourself to notice when those thoughts of yes, but it's them, and let that go, because they might have an absolutely winning point, or yes, but that's just HR, and let that go because they might have a winning point, then you're more open to the creative solutions, which are really where you win as a team.
Oh, you just said something, just by the way, like it's very easy, but it's what, for me at least, to learn that took a couple of years, and some still work on it. And it's let it go, let it go, and don't take it personally. No, it's not about me. Yes, I know what it's mine and what it's not mine, and what I can take and what I cannot take, and what I can let go. And one of the exercises that, for me at least, in my path, that I had to really work is what is mine and what is not mine. Uh, I mean, what not only thoughts but feelings and sensations, and what is my work and what is not my work, like taking responsibility of things that are not mine. Also, not also about work. I'm talking about more about the responsibilities of what I'm feeling, and because he didn't do that, I'm to blame and whatever. So then that go. How you allow yourself to let go.
Well, first of all, let me not pretend for a second that this is easy.
Yes.
You're absolutely right.
Yes.
There's nothing easy about it. And I would be the first to say that I don't succeed, probably most of the time. But my experience is that when I try, the anguish that I cause myself by going over and over and over the same thoughts is diminished, and the chances of me being successful in the meeting are greater. Not least because if I'm able to let go of a particular unconstructive thought, then I might be more successful in both hearing the other person and creating an atmosphere where they might hear me. So it's a two-way street. And I think, how do you do it? It's interesting. When I I try to explain the value of regular practice to people, and I'd be the first to say that there is a value in practicing for itself. Yeah. I mean, it can be a spiritual path, it can be all of those things, and it has an intrinsic value in itself. But for me personally, the other way that I've seen it have value in my life is that, use the example, if I go to the gym, I have never once gone to the gym thinking that I want to be brilliant at leg presses. It's just not a thing, or bench presses. When is that useful to me in my day-to-day life? I go to the gym because I want to be able to pick up a heavier wheelbarrow, or to be able to carry the shopping from the supermarket. I want to do the workout so I can be stronger to do the practical things. And in a similar way, for me, the exercise of noticing our thoughts, noticing our being carried away by thoughts, choosing to take agency over our mind and bring our attention back to the anchor, which in summary is what mindfulness is. If I practice that regularly, then when I'm in the meeting and my thought goes, yeah, but they said that last time and I don't like them, I can go, oh, hello, there's that thought. Let's just let that go, shall we? And let's come back to listening to what the person is saying. And it's that technique that, again, we have to constantly remember, there's a wonderful expression that mindfulness isn't difficult. Remembering to be mindful is the challenge. And I think that's so true.
Awareness. So the word for me is awareness. No, is to be aware. It's to be aware that you need to be aware. It's to be aware that, oh, what I call it in my book in chapter 11, the stories I'm telling myself, no, of what story I'm telling myself about that person. Maybe it's not correct. So let's give it a chance, no? Um, let's give it a chance to listen something else. Maybe he was in a bad mood that time. Maybe he fought with with his wife and whatever. So um, it's a moment. It doesn't define a person or a or an event because of the moment, right? It's not the an event doesn't define anything. It's just an event. And just to be aware to take it like that and not just to carry and have the resentfulness all your life of things that you did in second grade.
Oh, I completely agree. And that wonderful expression, which I know most people have heard, but it still rings true for me, is that resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It just it's completely futile, and the only person, it's the other cliche. I'm just coming out with loads of cliches this afternoon.
That's really nice because that's a very nice tool to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, and I think it's really true. It's a really unconstructive emotion, resentment, and it's like, again, cliche city, but it's like letting somebody live in your head rent free. Why do that? Why would you let somebody occupy your thoughts out of your own anger at something that you think they did that was wrong? That just gives them more airtime.
Yeah, you're giving all your power away to the other person to rule your life. You're giving your
Yes.
power away, thinking that way. Yeah, yeah. It's a very nice combination, leadership with mindfulness, that it's really needed today, especially in the run world, fast world that we live, and so much information that just to allow ourselves to pause and to be aware and pay attention. What am I thinking? Is this helping from my life, or is this taking me where I want to take? Is this harming me? Just to question your thoughts. It's really really helpful to lead also in a more compassion and successful way at the same time, isn't it?
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think this is, you've touched on so much in what you've just said. A couple of things I'd really like to pick up on. One is, I'd like to come back to the compassion point because that's critical for me. But I think there's something which I work with so many leaders, and it seems to be getting worse and worse, who are just under relentless pressure from their organizations, and that pressure and workload and targets, etc. It never seems to relent, and I think it seems to get harder and harder. And so, to some extent, what I try to offer is a set of toolkit to help people to thrive under pressure. But I'm very, very conscious that what I don't want to do is to give people tools just to put off being more stressed. The reality is that we can cover over some of the unsustainable natures of what we're doing by these techniques and techniques like them, because we can do more stuff, we can manage more stress, we can so on. I think where they're really powerful and effective is where the culture of the organization provides realistic, demanding, sure, but realistic workloads. And then your point about being both more effective and looking after your well-being is critical. And that's why I am such an advocate for this, because I think it's not just about well-being, it is about performance. But it has to be in an environment which is sustainable. The other part of it, which can happen, is that
There is no
people,
one without the other. There is no
I think,
performance without well-being.
exactly right, exactly right, exactly right. And I think the other thing that can really help, both within the structure of what we're currently doing and more broadly in our lives, is it can open us up to think, is this, exactly as you said, is this helping me achieve what I want to do in my life? But also, is actually this course of action that we're already embarked on, is that going to help the organization achieve what we want to achieve? Is it the way to success? So I think having that more a broader way of looking at things is critical to success and well-being. But if I can just come back to the compassion point, one of the things which I enjoy most in my work is having a group of senior leaders sitting around and then bringing in the word kindness and talk about how kindness can help your productivity. And it is really interesting. There's some really good studies about how people have done some objective work to establish how kindness can improve the outcomes for members of the team, but also the organization that they're working for. And I think that's fascinating, because as soon as you say it, everybody sort of blanches a bit and goes, oh, where's he going now? What's all that? We're not working, we're not working in a fluffy environment here. We're all supposed to be working really hard, and we don't have time for kindness. And by the end of the session, they're almost universally understanding, no. There's always a couple of people who just won't go with it. But I would say 99% of the people that I've talked to about this understand the power of kindness and how it can transform what an organization looks and feels like, and how successful it can be.
It's sometimes for me, in my opinion, it's the definition they have about the word kindness, because a lot of people see kindness as weakness, as softness and weakness, and you're not a macho, and you're not a strong and a leader because you're kind. And it's one of the exercises I do in my retreats too. From I have some, how you call it, blue ribbons that I says who I am makes a difference. So just to honor the other person for a good word, what they do well, what I like about you, what I admire from you, completely change the way people relate to each other. Just to say one good word, because we're used to punish and to point out the things that we don't do well, but to listen to things that we are doing well, or just to be aware, pay attention of not only the bad things the other person is doing, but the good things, and say them, is an act of kindness and change completely the dynamic of the organization. When you respect and honor and you acknowledge the effort of each person. And that remind me talk that I hear about Mario Alonso Puig from Spain. He's a psychiatric from Spain, that he said that it's very different to be a tough leader than to be a strong leader. What he says is to be tough is to punish and to give orders and just to maintain everything in line, and to be a firm leader. That's the word he used. Firm leader is to teach, to see, to allow mistakes, to see with compassion, to talk about the kindness, but to teach, not to punish, to guide, right? One is the leader that guides, and one is the leader that punishes. So, and the difference between one and the other is kindness. That's all. So it's very, very important that you point that out, because compassion is not poor me, is not pity. and people really confuse the words compassion with pity or self-pity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely agree. I'd also argue that it's a lot harder, a lot tougher to be a kind leader than it is to be a traditional macho, for want of a better word, leader. I think it takes more time, it takes more effort, it takes more emotional investment, it takes more professionalism in terms of how to how to be kind when delivering really tough messages. So it doesn't mean that you can't pull somebody up on poor performance or even dismiss somebody, but how do you do that? And one
Is
of the
the
things we
how. Yeah.
is the how. I remember I was always really struck by, I can't remember where it was now, but it was in the UK civil service, and there was an organization which was being closed down, and the guy who was leading it did a staff engagement survey before when he arrived, and they all knew that it was going to close, and some of them were going to lose their jobs, some of them were going to move to other parts of the organization they didn't particularly want to. And then he did a staff engagement survey at the end, and the staff engagement had gone up. And I thought that was brilliant, because it just demonstrated that even in a situation where you're closing something down, if you do it with compassion, integrity, professionalism, and I'm sure there were some very, very tough conversations in there, but there was a higher rate of staff engagement when they finished than when they started. I think that says all you need to know about how tough it is, but how possible it is.
Yeah, kindness does it all. The researchers uh, talk about the malpractice with the doctors when they are sue and when they are not sue. They usually are sue when they are very distant and cold-minded. But if they're kind and see and talk and and face the situation with compassion, people let go.
Mm.
Is they don't want the revenge. Also,
Mm.
it's where it comes that, oh, that's how you see me. You don't acknowledge my effort. You don't see who I am.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, Andrew, we all human beings want to be accepted and valued. And if we get that first, all the rest we can soften, we can release, we can let go, and then we can really we can lead and be led easily and with motivation also.
Completely agree. Absolutely right. Yeah.
What about if you find your teenager Andrew? What would you tell him to allow himself? What would you tell him today after you went through all what your experiences?
Oh, what a lovely question to ask. The first thing I'd tell him is it's going to be all right.
It's going to be all right. Yeah. That's because we think at the teenager that it's everything a mess, or we worry too much, or what.
I think, well, I don't know what every other teenager thinks, but I remember thinking that I didn't have a clue what was going on, that I had already started making mistakes and wasn't achieving as much as I wanted to achieve. Um, and I think that sort of worry and anxiety was really unhealthy and unhelpful. I think there's so much pressure put on teenagers, and there was, and this is quite a while ago now. But I
We
think
are
it's
in the
got worse.
second phase. We are in the second teenager
Oh,
phase.
oh, is that all right? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll go with that. I I think there is something to that, actually, because yeah, there definitely is something to that. But I think looking at the teenagers, or my kids who are like beyond teenage now, but they've been under enormous pressure, and it's not dissimilar to what I was under. What career am I going to have? How quickly am I going to get that income? How on earth do I get to have a house or a property, or buy a car or whatever? And it hasn't changed at all, and it's just a huge amount of stress. And I think what I've learned, and what I would say and tried to say to my kids, was as far as you can, try and do something that you love, because if you actually find a way of making a living from something that you love, you'll never do a day's work in your life. And I think that's still true. And I think I'm very conscious that I've been very, very fortunate in my life and in my career, and hope to continue to be so. But I think there is an element of that teenager who was worrying about things which were completely beyond their control, and that if they'd known that it was going to be okay, they could have just chilled out a bit more.
Really, really nice. Everything is going to fall into place. That's my saying. Everything will be okay. Will fall into place. Is if you think, like you say, if you do things you love and you like, yours, not your parents or your teachers or your mates, yours. It doesn't mean that you won't have obstacles and challenges in the way, but you will face them easier because you really see where you want to go. It's not
Yeah.
just where you want to
Uh,
get.
I think there's also something about values. The only two rules that we gave our kids were respect yourself and respect other people, because we kind of figured that everything else followed from that. Because if
Yeah,
you,
it's what, in my opinion, for me, in my words, would be what do you allow yourself others to do to you, and what do you allow yourself to do to yourself? Because you're teaching the others how to treat you. So if you don't respect yourself, it's very hard to other people to respect you.
yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely. I think it's very much part, and it's also another part of what I try to bring to teams and leaders is that this capacity to connect with our values. If we're not working aligned to our values, again, it's like an organization fighting against its culture. It's going to be hard work. If you find something that is aligned with your values, then you're more likely to fly, I think.
yeah, really, really nice. Anyway, it has been a wonderful conversation, Andrew. Thank you very much for being in our podcast. Thank you for opening your heart, for sharing your experience, your life, and just for the listeners, you know that Andrew wrote a very nice book that is called Organizational Mindfulness: How to Guide, that you can get it anywhere, and especially in his website that is lxleaders.com. lxleaders.com. So, is there anything else you would like to share?
No, just a massive thank you. It's been an absolute delight to have a conversation with you, and again, real privilege to be part of your growing family in this podcast.
Thank you very much. And for everyone listening, remember, mindfulness, leadership together, they get really well. And give yourself permission to take up your space, to rest, to reset, to begin again, and especially to become what you're meant to be. So, thank you very much. It was really a pleasure.
Thanks ever so much.